Hey, hope you had some coffee already. It's a little bit later than normal, but got mine over here. You know the drill? Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting to me that the more I seek God, the more or the closer that I try and live to Him, the more the more I search for Him, the more I try and be with Him, the more I try and better and sharpen myself, be aware of Him, the more things I realize, the more things I see, the more things I see him showing me things, telling me things, pointing out things all around me, not just within me, but especially within me because I'm a work in progress. We need to improve every day. There's always something that can be a little bit better. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And I was just saying to somebody yesterday about how amazing it is that we don't get tired of the self improvement. We don't get tired of this awareness that we do. So, you know, the Bible says to be aware and be vigilant. And it's not just for the enemy, but yes, for the enemy. So it's if you walk with somebody and you're busy speaking to somebody and God points something out to them, or they say something in a way that they shouldn't, or like in the past where we've spoken about these habitual sayings, you go, oh, I'm stupid. And you need to speak, you need to point that out to them immediately so you can get rid of that. So that thing doesn't hit a root. If you understand what I'm saying, don't put these on. Don't put labels on yourself, especially not the negative ones, especially not accidentally either. But in this awareness, it was so fascinating to me when we were speaking yesterday about how we never get tired in that. And their first response was something that I always say to somebody as well. Is like, in God's grace, if you operate within your grace, it's you don't get tired there. You don't get tired operating within your grace. God sustains you completely, and I kept on saying to them, it blows my mind about how God sustains you. And sometimes it looks like and feels like it doesn't even feel like it. It looks like it to other people. When I sit and think about it at times, I'm just going and going and going and going and going and going. And then I have people around me. I've had some that say, dude, you need to rest. Dude, you need to chill sometimes. You need to slow down. You need to do something. And I just smile and wave and continue with my thing because God sustains me and He keeps me at that pace. And I love running at that pace. It's you learn to love it. That the moment I slow down, it's like no. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? We need to go again. And it's incredible how this works. I mean, it needs a certain mental strength to be unconsciously aware of these things that happen around you, so you can point it out. I realized how amazing it also is, and how awesome it is to speak to somebody who not only understands it, but also the level of humility in them that is literally on other levels to receive these sort of things. It's a person who the first thing we tend to speak about is God, and it's amazing, and how they are, and how I am, and I point things out, they point things out. When the stuff is pointing out, it's received with such humility. Not that instant, nee, vercheck, ek is nie verkeerd nie. Not that sort of response. And it's incredible. Then in turn, when things were pointed out to me, because we sometimes have a tendency, and out of old habits, to speak incorrectly. It might not always be what we mean, but if you speak incorrectly, you could accidentally do something over there as well. So when that pointed out how I responded, and if I compared it to how I used to respond in my past, it's different levels where God had us, And it's not judgment. It's not judging each other. We're meant to help each other. We can't see everything as an individual. Inside the box, you hardly see everything at all. But when there's somebody outside of the box and looking from the outside, and if you have more than one, great, because they all have different angles. As we're meant to help each other, we're meant to sharpen each other. As the Bible says in Proverbs 27, verse 17, Solomon wrote, as iron sharpens iron, so one a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Now, the word countenance, it says, the original Greek says the face of his friend. So, but it does speak to more than that. We got to sharpen each other. And, Hebrews chapter 10, 24, 25 says, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Proverbs again in chapter 18, Verse 24 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And that friend is the person who, even people who's not that close can point things out. And even if they do it from a judgmental side, if you receive it from the growing side, you can already adapt it and you can learn from that as well. Irrelevant of how they intended it. God intends it for your good. We know this. And then one of my favorite chapters, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, says, therefore encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. So it's in the building up of each other that we are doing it. That's why we sharpen each other. That's why we need to sharpen each other. So there's a few examples in the word about sharpening being a good thing. And if you can ask any person who needs to use a sword or a knife to cut something and ask him about the condition of the blade, they're probably going to say one of the main things is it needs to be sharp. And we go, duh. So if you know that, why did you ask? How hard it is and how tempered it is, and all these things are added extras depending on what you need to do with the blade. But you got to remember that it can hurt. If you've ever seen somebody sharpen a knife or sharpen a sword, on the sharpening stone or a whetstone or a flat file, they're grinding this blade against this piece of stone, this piece of rock, so to speak. They're grinding it, so it's literally chipping and shaving and chafing away at the edge of this blade. So if that's you and iron sharpens iron, it can hurt. There are moments that it's gonna hurt, because sometimes it's things we don't know yet. Sometimes it's things we don't want to deal with yet, or sometimes things we don't even realize, or we know it's there but we don't want to touch on it yet because it's gonna hurt. That hurt is the chafing, is the grinding against that whetstone, on that flat file. That's where the grinding comes in. So it can hurt because it surely damages the blade to run it there, and that's the same way but we keep in mind it's for your own good. It's for your own good, the sharpening. And if the right people are walking with you, it's going to be for God's glory, and to add to the equipment or build your equipment better that you need for what you need to do in life for God. All in all, it's a good thing, a great thing on other levels, because we say we want to be better every day. We say we want to improve every day. And by sharpening each other, it helps a lot to be open to that, be open to something like that. So, first I find one of the first things is to acknowledge the fact that we all often say, but do we really? Is to acknowledge the fact that you are not perfect. We have rough edges, as it were, that needs to be sharpened. To acknowledge the fact that there are things in our life where we need to be better at, things that need to change, things that need to be different, things that need to fall off completely even. We need to acknowledge that. And secondly, is to get into a mental state to be open to receiving, not judgment, sharpening. To be open to receive sharpening from that friend. Because we can't see our own faults all the time. And that's why brothers that walk together, the iron sharpens the iron. That's why we need others. So don't be afraid to boldly and courageously assist your friend in sharpening them. But do it with sincerity. You can't sharpen in arrogance. That's not good either. Because a man who's arrogant is going to fall on his face, I feel. God elevates the humble. But we've got to do it with sincerity because you truly want them to be better. And as you build it, as you sharpen them, but always, 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 always be ready to receive some sharpening.